Hello everybody, my name is Ian Moore, the internationally known and locally respected Invincible Chef. Now I'm here to introduce you to my Southern barbecue stylings with three of my famous dishes: my Invincible Brisket, my tri-tip roast, and my rib tips. They're very simple to make using my fundamental steps, and if you follow these, you can have a great tailgate and you can enjoy barbecue on your own terms. So what we're gonna do is show you the preparation phase of this, throw it on the grill and cook it, and then we're gonna show you a nice, decent presentation so you can go ahead and put it on a plate where it's not gonna last. It'll look good for a second and everybody's gonna thrash it. So get ready to learn how to make some outstanding barbecue and have a good time with the Invincible Chef. This is You Know You Want This Smoke with the Invincible Chef. Let's get into it. All right, everybody, it's your boy, the Invincible Chef. Welcome back. One of the main things I like to do is tailgate. And since I'm a big Bears fan, I got to represent, so I threw on my Bears apron. Now, one of the things that we got to have at a tailgate is a good brisket. Now, my style is Southern barbecue, all right, from my roots in Georgia all the way through my time in the Midwest. I bring that with me. And my brisket is undefeated, hence the name, the Invincible Chef. So what I'm gonna do is show all of you out there how you can prepare a brisket that's gonna be second to none, and it's gonna bring people out to your tailgate, whether you do that at the game, in your backyard, or home for your families. So first thing you have to do is get you a good quality cut of meat. There's a lot of places where you can source it. Nobody has to be a professional at this, but you need to get a piece that's fairly lean. Now, brisket used to be a throwaway cut of meat, had a lot of fat on it. But when people found out that it can be slow roasted or slow smoked and get very juicy and tender at the end, it became something very valuable, a delicacy, and a mainstay in the barbecue game. And when you get meat like that, you cannot lose at a tailgate. So what I have right here is part of a brisket that we're gonna be having for this show. We're gonna start out how we prep it. First, it's already been cleaned and been trimmed. I left a little fat cap on there so we can make sure that as it cooks slowly on the grill, that fat is gonna render and it's gonna make that meat in there tender and juicy. Then we have to get a binder. You see, a lot of people don't understand that when you barbecue slow and low, the juices cook out through the meat. And when that happens, it'll wash off any type of seasonings and things like that you put on there. Especially people like to pack them on. The thing that I like to tell people is, when you're cooking barbecue, you want to put it together like a project. Be a little bit meticulous about it. But just like anything you build, it starts with the foundation. So what we're gonna do is start with binding. Some people like to use something a little bit thick, whether it be mayonnaise or mustard or things like that. But when I do my large cuts of meat like a brisket or something, I like to use something savory, something that's gonna get into the meat. Now, my preference is Worcestershire sauce cut with a little bit of vinegar, a rice wine vinegar, and soy sauce. The reason why I do that is because the acidic nature of those gets into the meat and it helps break it down. Already starts the already beginning decomposition process. And so what ends up happening is it helps the meat become tender early, and it helps whatever seasonings you put over dissolve easier and break down into the meat. So I have a small portion here, about like, I'd say about a quarter cup or so of the mixture. And it's a 1-to-1 ratio of Worcestershire sauce, and then you have the rice wine vinegar, and then you have the soy sauce. So I take this and I lightly pour it onto the meat. Now, you aren't gonna be heavy-handed with this because you're going to spread it across. I start with the fat cap because the reason is you want it to soak into this fat, because a lot of this fat is water, which is gonna give you a really good juicy taste with that rendering that'll be sitting in the pan. Because once you slice that brisket, those slices are gonna lay in that rendering and soak up that flavor. So you're gonna take that, you're gonna pour it across, and you wanna make sure that every side is gonna get a nice even coating, okay? You don't want any of the meat looking the way it was when you first presented it. It gives you a chance to get that soaked in on either side, and then you're gonna flip it. But pay attention that the edges get the binder on there, because a lot of people neglect that, where they put on the seasoning or the binding. Now, the creamy binders that are thick are good, and they help for the rub to clump up and stick on there. But I want this to take action on the meat first, and it enhances the flavor quite a bit. So that's why that's important. The next thing is the rub itself. Now, I have several different rubs that I use depending on the texture of the meat, because a lot of people who really know me knows I'm a nerdy guy. So I take the academic approach when it comes to making my meat, seasonings for my meat, my sauces, and everything else. So what we're gonna do is prepare this brisket. It is a thick, savory cut. So we're gonna wanna use seasonings that bring out the flavor of the meat, like a steak or something. So we're going to have paprika, roasted chili pepper, coarse kosher salt, a garlic and herb seasoning, coarse ground black pepper, and fine ground white pepper. It doesn't give the kick that a lot of people think, actually gives it a little bit of a subtle flavor that makes it, rounds out the robustness of the paprika and the chili pepper and everything like that. And the combination of all these is gonna help. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna throw these in the bowl here and mix them together. Each one of these is about, for the major parts of the seasoning, about 1.5 teaspoons for the portion we're gonna use here. Okay, they're not 1-to-1. It's about 1/2 teaspoon when it comes to the peppers, but more when it comes to the paprika and the things of that nature. Okay, we throw those in and we're gonna mix them around. And what we can see right here as we're mixing it is the texture. Now, the important thing about this is that coarseness of that kosher salt is gonna do you the favor of scoring the meat. When you score this meat, it kind of cuts across the grain and it basically cuts into the meat and gives it openings. And when it gets those openings, because of the way the soy sauce and the Worcestershire sauce are already working on the meat, it allows for the flavor to penetrate. So not only are you shaking the seasonings on there, but when they meet up with these substances that are already there, it's gonna dissolve into it. It's gonna penetrate deeper, and because of the scoring of the surface of the meat, it allows the smoke to penetrate. Generally, when you put something on the grill and there's a lot of smoke, you might be able to capture smoke for about 30 minutes. But if you score the surface of the meat, if you use a rub that's a little bit more coarse, then you make it a little bit more porous. When your meat is porous on the surface, you'll set yourself up to receive smoke for up to about 6 hours. What that does is give you the opportunity for a really deep and intense smoke ring and a deep penetration of that smoky flavor. Now, we set that up by, depending on what kind of coals we use, because at this point I'm going to be using a Weber kettle grill, okay, starting with charcoals. But to enhance that flavor, you'll choose some woods, like local fruit trees is also good. For when I use a heavier cut of meat like this, I like to use apple and cherry wood because it gives it a rich color and enhances the flavor quite a bit. Because my philosophy when it comes to these cuts of meat and all my barbecue is that the flavor should be in the chew, not the bite. Because a lot of people put a lot of seasoning on the top of their meat. And then when you bite it, you taste the rub. But then as you start to chew, the meat is bland. But if you prepare it properly, that flavor will be through to the bone if it's bone-in meat, or all the way through the cut of the brisket. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take some of this rub and then we're going to prepare this meat and we're going to season it. So now we have this mixed seasoning here. We're going to put a nice liberal coating across the surface of that meat. Okay, now this is the side that doesn't have the fat cap. Okay, so it's rather smooth, but it has a lot of striations because of the musculature of the meat there, and that's fine. But what I'm doing here is just putting a light coating and I'm massaging it around on the meat. Because of that coarse kosher salt, it's scoring that meat across there and it's opening up little porous areas and it's breaking through any membrane that's on the surface of the meat. All right, changing the texture of the surface, as it were. And once it does that, that's going to make sure that that flavor gets in. And now we have that fat cap, and this is going to be very valuable for you later on in the cook, because what needs to happen is for a lot of this flavor and this seasoning to get into this fat, and when it breaks down and renders, it's going to make the most wonderful, juicy rendering in the bottom of the pan, and it's going to actually enhance the flavor of the meat even more as it sets in there. So we make sure we rub that deep into that fat cap, because ultimately it's going to make its way down in there, as I make sure that you get that seasoning on the sides as well, because we want it to be even. We don't want any parts unseasoned. You don't want to, like I say to people all the time, don't cheat yourself, treat yourself. You know what I'm saying? Get that flavor on all sides. Rotate it as best you can to make sure that all of it is seasoned, because you don't want any surprises. One of the worst things that can happen to you is to find out that you put all this time in and you didn't get an effective coating of the rub on the meat. Now we're back to the other side, and we just take it here, and this is where you take the rub and you pack it on. Because earlier what I did was, since I rubbed it in, we got that nice penetration from the seasonings, and that right there is going to set the stage for a knockout flavor when you get this brisket going. So the cook time for this brisket depends on the size, and you're going to do 30 minutes, okay? 30 minutes for each half pound or so. And that depends on what type of smoker you're going to use. There's fast cook methods, there's short cook methods, and to each their own. I'm not the guy to tell you that I'm the expert on this. I just know that I have proven methods that have guaranteed that I have a tender, juicy brisket. So the thing that I'm gonna do for you is show you the way the Invincible Chef does it. Because the thing is, a lot of you I know, and I like to come to your house and hang out with you. I'm not a gatekeeper, so I will give you all my secrets so that when I come over, I can eat some tender, juicy barbecue at your house as well. So, hey, friends help friends make good barbecue. So now look at this. Look at that brisket flat. Nice, well seasoned. You can see the texture of all these different seasonings and herbs mixed together and all that. And it's a nice, even coating across all of the meat, even on the sides. And what that's gonna do for you is make sure that the meat is fully penetrated, and it's gonna get that flavor, and it's gonna be pretty much universal. Now, after we put this in the cooler for about 30 minutes, I'm gonna come right back and I'm gonna show you the next steps, because the timeline for the brisket is long, and that gives me an opportunity to prepare the other two meats, which will be a tri-tip roast and some rib tips. So let's get this brisket squared away. I'm gonna put this in the pan, slide it into the cooler, and I'll be right back. All right. Now, one of the next things we want to do is bring on this cut of meat right here. It's called the tri-tip roast. Now, this is a California cut. Now, a lot of people don't know about this because it's regional, but when it's cooked properly, it's very tender, very juicy. Now, the common way to cook it is on what's called a Santa Maria grill, where you raise it up and down so that it doesn't touch the flames, but it gets varying degrees of heat. Now, my tendency is to put it on the smoker, but in this situation right here, I'm gonna cook it on the regular grill so everyone can get the basic concept of how to prepare it. Now, what I'm gonna do with it is season it and prepare it just like the other meats, because the rub that I made is a universal. All right, it's a barbecue rub that can be used from anything from chicken to pork to beef. I generally make my rubs based on the texture and the thickness of the meat itself, and it brings out the flavor of the meat as per it's going to be used. So what we're doing right now is we're going to carry on with making this tri-tip cut. So since we already have our little proprietary blend of Worcestershire sauce, soy sauce, and the red wine vinegar, we're going to go and apply that as a binder here, because since this meat is already exposed and it has the ribbons of fat in there and the striations, it's going to have a lot of juicy flavor that's going to be brought out by breaking down with this Worcestershire sauce. So I'm going to go ahead and pour a little bit of that across the top and go ahead and rub that in with the fingers, massage it a little bit, because we aren't going to have to worry about it as much with this as the brisket, because we can cook this directly on the grill, and it's going to get that juicy affectation early on. So you don't have to smoke it very long, but I like to cook it that way to get the deep flavor in it. But since we're doing the direct grilling, it should happen pretty quick. When you're cooking a tri-tip roast, you want to finish it at about 125 degrees, maybe 130, because it looks really good and tastes excellent at about a nice medium. So when you get that albumin coming out and you have a nice pink, juicy piece of meat, slices and everything, it's pretty good. Excellent on sandwiches, but just by itself, it's awesome. You don't even need to put any sauce on it. So as we go ahead and get that little sauce blend on there to get it started for the binding, I'm gonna rub that through one more time. I took the liberty of going and peeling off the previous parts of the membrane and the extra fat that was on there, because it comes together pretty thick with fat, but I trim it off and leave enough in there so we can have the flavor. Once again, we're gonna grab that rub, and you can see once again that texture of the rub, pretty coarse, and it's awesome because the striations and the splits in the muscle is gonna make it easy for us to get that rub deep down in there. And that's gonna be very important for you, because when you wanna do barbecue, when you put the rub in, you can rub it on or you can pack it on. Now, everybody's preference is different, but me, I want the flavor in the meat. And if you can do that, then you're gonna guarantee that people are gonna be ready to jump and shout when they taste it. All right, so the good thing about this, and the most important thing is, if you get that flavor in there and you do it well with the rub itself, the natural juices of the meat are gonna cook out through the meat. And what they're gonna do is they're gonna be infused with the flavor and the essence of these herbs and seasonings that you put on the meat. And so that's what you're gonna get when I tell you it's more important for the flavor to be in the chew instead of the bite. So as you're chewing and those juices are arriving, as you get that taste, it's gonna stay with you until you are satisfied when you swallow that piece down and you get another bite. And next thing you know, you're gonna be fiending to get another piece. Hopefully there'll be enough left, but hey, when you're at an Invincible Chef barbecue, there's hardly any left. So you better get yours quick, but don't be too greedy because other people are gonna want to eat too. So as we prepare this tri-tip, it reminds me of preparing for all these different tailgates because I've done so many over the years. And as you notice, I'm wearing this apron. I'm representing the once and future champs. I'm a Chicago Bears fan. Now we haven't done much winning recently, but for me, it has a little bit deeper meaning because as I cheer for the Bears regularly, I'm in the group called Elite Superfans, among others. But my friends and I like to dress up for the games. Oftentimes you'll see people in the end zone and they'll be up there on the Jumbotron. I've been on the Jumbotron several times for the Bears, and I dress up and my fan persona is the Invincible Bear fan. Now, aside from getting some brand recognition and things like that, it brings attention to me because of what the outfit looks like. But when people come up to talk to me, it's not about fame. The opportunity is for them to discuss our main charity, which is anti-bullying. We like to bring attention to the fact that there are so many children in the school system that are underserved when it comes to their needs, their emotional development, and they're being mistreated by some other children that may themselves be maladjusted. So we raise attention to this and we raise money from donations. Those donations go out to school systems around the country. And what that ends up happening is it makes sure that they can have funding for programs where teachers can be educated on how to de-escalate violence in the schools and teach kids how to de-escalate these situations and teach them how to have conflict resolution. It helps kids from getting so desperate they feel like they need to harm themselves. And that's helped quite a bit over the years, and I'm very adamant about that. That, along with also raising money for the children's hospitals so that they can make sure the rescue and research hospitals are free to children and their families. So I use my fandom and super fandom to bring attention to that. But more than that, I'm always going to be a devoted Bears fan, so I'm going to represent them hard as I can. So what we have here is a well-seasoned tri-tip roast. This one is ready to go on the grill. So as I go ahead and make sure these last finishing touches are done, I'm going to set this here for a couple of minutes, and when I get done, we're going to be back in a few minutes. All right, everybody, now it's time for some action. It's your boy, the Invincible Chef, starting back up with this tri-tip. We brought it to the grill. Now, we already had to start the grill up in time enough for the coals to get nice and hot. You want them to ash over so that the right temperature and everything if you're going to use direct heat. Now, I started them off in a pile, then I spreaded them out so the heat is nice and even in the kettle. So now that I know that they're ready, because I can feel the heat from standing back here, they're at a good 370 degrees, all right? So I'm going to take this nice, juicy cut of tri-tip. Look at that. You can hear it while we're setting that on the grill. So it's going to get some pretty decent drill marks on there. I'm going to set that on the grill, and what we're going to do, since we already have the lower flume open so that a little bit of air can come through and the coals can breathe, that's going to let the heat circulate inside of the kettle, and we're going to get that convection effect. It's going to let this tri-tip roast cook up nice and juicy. I'm going to pour the rest of that sauce on there so it can help that flavor. And then we're going to make sure that it cooks evenly. Now, it doesn't have to stay on that long, and we're going to make sure we come back and check the temperature in a little bit to ensure that the internals are nice, even 125 and 130 degrees, so that when you slice it, it's going to be nice, tender, has a nice easy pull for you, and it's going to be delicious and easy to chew. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab the lid, taking the lid, closing the grill, and we're going to open up the eyes just a little bit. Okay, it's only open about a third of the way. This is going to allow for not only for debris from the bottom up, but for the air to circulate in and then find its way out. That smoke flavor is gonna flow through the meat, and the heat is gonna keep circulating. It's gonna build up that juiciness, allowing for that the heat to cook out through the meat and everything, and those juices will cook through, and all of that flavor that infused with the rub, as well as those sauces, going to make sure that we can complete it. So the next time you'll see this, it'll be done, it'll be ready to slice. So we'll be back in a few minutes and we're gonna check on it. And then we're gonna go back in and we're gonna get started on those rib tips. Welcome back, everybody. It's your man, the Invincible Chef, one more time. We're gonna work on something right now I like to refer to as rib tips, all right? Now, rib tips are something you use for a snack, an entree, or appetizer, whatever else. And I think it's a pretty good cut of meat. Now, I call it basically free cuts of meat. Because what happens is when you get spare ribs, you get the whole set of ribs, and you wanna do a St. Louis cut, which is that slim cut that everybody likes, you go ahead and cut off the brisket portion of the meat right along here, and then you have this strip of meat that's left. It's really, really tender and meaty. It has the cartilage net in it. I like to go ahead and cut those into chunks and smoke them up just like the ribs. They come up just as tender. I season them up the same way. And then they're bite-sized pieces of pork meat that are very, very tender, juicy, and delicious. Seasoned up the same way, it's just the experience of eating the ribs without the bone. And it's outstanding for people that are waiting on for the regular meat to get done. So as we do this, we're gonna set you up with something delicious that can be used as a snack, or you know what, it can be a small entree. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention a few things. As we get to this part, because there's gonna be a quick little setup meat to go through, I have to mention a few people to help me to get here. This is my friend Maurice Watkins of the Warriors Group, all right? One of the best realtors in the game, and he's one of my sponsors to help me get ready for this. Not to mention my friends, Sonny Sanatavalai, and then you got the Veterans Medical Group with my friend Diallo Sullivan, and many friends and family that contributed. Everybody contributed to this opportunity for me to get this. I consider them my sponsors, so my success is your success. So as we do this, I'm gonna cook another barbecue masterpiece. I'll be using my hands, but you all will be with me as I do this. So as we prepare these rib tips, we're gonna take the same sauce for binding and seasoning as we did before. We're gonna go ahead and pour this into the bowl because we're gonna mix it around so that we can soak this up into the meat on here. Now the meat in here is really thick pieces and very tender, as pork often is. So as I pour this in here, I'm gonna go ahead and just mix it around a little bit, okay? You just toss it around, just like, you know, you're mixing up salad pieces and things like that. And it's no big deal. Take your time, you know, get in there and let the sauces and the juices mix together, because all you want is a light, thin coating of it. So it's gonna hold the seasonings when you put the seasonings in there as well. So as we mix that meat in there and the little pieces of bone's gonna knock together and make sure that we get all the seasoning across those, the sauces across those pieces, it works the same way we did the larger cuts. Then we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna get our rub. I always like to take a nice heavy smattering and put it across the top, okay? Then shake it up a little bit and then add a little more. And just like we were folding it together before, we just make sure that all the sides touch. Get nice even coverage. You know, you don't have to worry about getting too much of it because, you know, they're all spending quality time together in there. Mixing around like, you know, like kids playing around on one of those big things where they have the colored balls in there at McDonald's or something. You know, just shake it around. You can have fun with it. You get these pieces thawed out and everything. They're nice and soft, so they're not hard to deal with. They're pretty easy to manage. And don't worry about putting too much seasoning on there, because at the point at which you do this, it's going to bind to the meats. A little bit will be left in the bowl, and that's not going to be a problem for you at all. Easy to clean up. But the bits that get onto the rib tips is going to make them very savory. Now, when you put them on the grill, they're going to cook at the same temperature and everything as you would with spare ribs, and the same kind of direct heat and everything. And so you spread them out on the grill so there's a little bit of space in between for the heat to flow. And then after a while, you just pull them up, making sure that with your tongs and everything, you move them around so they can get a little bit of that searing from the grill on each side. And when you get through, you're gonna get nice, tender, juicy, bite-sized pieces. You know, just be careful, you know, for the pieces that have the bones. But if you do it right and you set it up and you smoke it for a nice decent amount of time, you're gonna get tender, juicy pieces that slide off of these bones and cartilage. And you just go pop those pieces back down on the plate. Bite-sized barbecue magic, as far as I'm concerned. So a few more seconds of turning these around in here, and voila. What we have is some thoroughly seasoned, evenly coated pork rib tips. Now, this is something I learned about when I was in Peoria, Illinois. I have a lot of fans there, and it makes me reminisce about this gentleman that lived there a long time ago. Had this place called Big John's Barbecue and another place called Big O's. And this was a staple. You could get a big box of rib tips for like maybe $10. A lot of sauce on them, and then get yourself some fries, a large soda, and you can call it a day. Now, something like this before a big game or something will have you set. So a couple of sets of those between you and your friends, you're gonna have anything to worry about. So now that we got these seasoned, we're gonna let them set for a few minutes, and when we come back, we're gonna take these, put them on the grill right next to that tri-tip as it's making its way through the cooking session, and let them get to work. Let the grill do the work for you, and you're gonna have that barbecue magic. So we'll be back in a few minutes, and we're gonna set up the next stage. All right, everybody, welcome back. We're at the grill again, and we're about to go ahead and throw on these rib tips. As you can see, the tri-tip is starting to fill out, and it's getting some good temperature on it. The backside is seared, so we're gonna go ahead and flip that over. Look at that, it's got a nice crust on it, a little bit of carbon there, but that's good to go because the inside should be close to done. So right now we're gonna concentrate on these rib tips. I'm just gonna go ahead and dump them out on the grill. Then at this point, I'm gonna spread them out so they get some spacing in between them, all right? And this spacing will allow that hot air, to flow in between them, all right? It's gonna allow them to cook a little faster, but since they're coated and so well seasoned, they're gonna get that good color to them and that flavor. And you can't beat that. You can already smell it here right now. You look at it and you can smell it. The smoke is coming up nicely, and it's gonna make that really, really good. I'm gonna leave this tri-tip on here for just a few minutes, get a little sear on the other side, and I'm gonna take it in there and proof it on the inside in the oven. Maybe about 2 or 3 minutes, and then I'm gonna take it out to the cutting board and slice it on up for some nice juicy tri-tip. So right now, let's go ahead and get these rib tips situated so they're not stuck together. We don't want any meat cooking on top of any other pieces, all right? So we get that spacing properly, all right? That's very important. You don't want any pieces being stuck together because you want everything getting done in its own time. The problem that people have sometimes is when they throw a bunch of meat on there together, they have pieces that are stuck together that don't end up getting fully cooked. So our priority is to make sure that these meat and pieces of meat, have their own time to shine. All right, so most of the grill is there. Then we're gonna give this and that doggone tri-tip a little bit long on that other side. And then we're gonna go ahead and close this up. Yeah, they look delicious like that, but they're gonna take a little time to cook. So we're gonna give these some time to get ready, and then we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Once again, it's the Invincible Chef, and we are done with this tri-tip. We got a nice sear on the top and bottom, and once you can press it, you see a lot of the juices and albumin flowing out. Now, I have this leave-in thermometer here, so I test them regularly. When you want to cook a tri-tip and it starts to get really juicy, you want to cook it so it's done to a medium rare for tri-tip, because the flavor is best at that point. So you go ahead and put the temperature in there at the thickest part. And what you're looking for is 125 to 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Since we've got that verified temperature, what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and slice it. So since it's a pointy, kind of like a crescent shaped piece of meat there, what we do is we start at the narrow end and we cut it around till it gets to about to the fat part there. And then after that, we're going to cut straight across here. A lot of people, when they get these cuts of meat, they kind of don't know how to cut them properly. Like, when you come to Thanksgiving, people are a little bit hesitant about who's gonna cut the turkey because it ends up getting hacked up. There are actually instructions on how you cut a turkey breast. Well, the same thing for different cuts of meat, whether it be a brisket, which you cut against the grain, and for a tri-tip. So I prefer to start at the pointy end after we've done the trimming and everything and the seasoning and cooking, and we're gonna start from there. So I'll go ahead and brace my fingers again. It's a nice sharp knife, and see, it has a little bit of pushback because we know that it's done, but it's gonna be nice and tender. Now look at that. The meat should be pink to white, okay? And you can see that nice crisp sear, a little bit of smoke ring around the outside, and you can see that it's done. And as you're cutting it, you'll see a lot of juices flowing out. And I lay these over to the side here because what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna take them off and I'm gonna lay them on the plate here with a little bit of garnish. I got some green leaf, some lettuce right there. And you know, the juices are gonna flow and lay on top of that. Be nice and cool, but also you can go ahead, enjoy this meat and eat the garnish because that flavor is gonna be all throughout. So I'm gonna cut it medium to thick, you know what I'm saying? Because that way you can enjoy and savor the flavor. Look at that. Lay these slices out. So I go ahead and just like grabbing a deck of cards, I can lay that across that garnish. Let me pull this plate up so everybody can see that and slide the meat over. And there. And in the middle should be nice and rosy and pink. So you get that medium rare almost and that albumin. And let me tell you, I'm gonna go ahead and sample a piece. I generally don't do this, but yeah. If I must say so myself, that's outstanding. Nice and juicy, texture is there. You can taste how the rub is broken down, and you still get a hint of that Worcestershire and the other sauces that were mixed in there. So it's nice and lean. Bend over your finger like that. You can see the juice is still in the meat evident there. When you know you've done it right, you can see in the slices that there's juices evident in the striations. Because a lot of times when people slice meat, it pushes the juice out of the meat and the slices end up dry. That's for one of two reasons. Either the knife is dull or you cooked it too high. You want to be in a situation where you allow those juices to gradually work their way out of the meat so that you can savor that juiciness. So we're going to get these slices done and arrange them on that so that is set to be enjoyed. Look at that right there. And what's going to end up happening is you can come up, grab a slice, make a sandwich, or just go ahead and eat it right off the plate, because the whole thing of this is to enjoy it. Now we get to that end part, you can slice that right across, just like I said. And these are going to be those little bite-sized pieces that end up being for the snacking and for the people that just can't wait. Look at that, all the way through, it's done. So I'm gonna take these other slices, I'm gonna add them over here on the garnish. Look at that. And see with the presentation, oh, and see, this is what I was talking about. That rendering of that juice is just more flavor that it adds when it lands in there. So these right here are just like little appetizer chunks. You can go ahead and lay those on there, and those little triangles, because of the shape of the tri-tip, are gonna fill out that plate and make sure that everybody that gets an opportunity to taste it is gonna enjoy it. I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna keep these little chunks to myself. So here we are, everybody, a juicy tri-tip roast. I'm ready to enjoy this, and I'm looking forward to sharing it to everybody, with everyone else. So while we enjoy this, I'm gonna take a little break. We're gonna go check on the rib tips, and then we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Once again, Invincible Chef, and it is now time for a superstar. This is the home run hitter right here. This is the signature item on my menu, the Invincible Brisket. It's cooked for a long time, low and slow, so it's nice, juicy, and tender. So what I'm gonna do right now is go ahead and show you the finished product. Now, we set this up in the beginning by putting that sauce on there, letting it seep into the meat, into that fat cap, and then we went ahead and put that rub in. We rubbed it in initially, scored the surface of the meat, and then we put on that rub, packed on a little bit, then we put it in there. Now, since it took a long time, a couple of the stages, didn't bear presenting, All right, what we ended up doing was after we got it smoked in there, it got to a certain temperature, which is about like 160, 170 degrees, wrapped it in butcher paper, put it back on there, wrapped real tight, sealed the container until it rose to approximately 202 degrees. Let it rest for about an hour and a half and then pulled it out, and the internal was about like 180, almost 160, 180 degrees holding. But it was tender throughout because, so everybody understands, if you want your brisket to be nice and tender, 202 degrees is the point at which the muscle tissue starts to separate. That'll give you that tenderness. But it needs to hold at that temperature for at least 30 minutes. That's why it's important to make sure it's wrapped tight, sealed up, and allowed to rest without being interrupted. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get to this brisket. Now, what I'm gonna do right now is I'm going to slice it across the face of it so we can see. We got the top part of the point and the flat, and you got that fat in the inside. And when we slice it, you're going to see the juices flow out of there so we can see we have a nice, tender, juicy slice right there, which we're gonna lay out on our grilled peppers and onions. Look at that. Oh, that's good. You squeeze that, you can see the juices coming out, but we don't wanna go ahead and showcase that. We just wanna see that nice, tender cut, thick slices across that grain, nice, tender, and juicy all the way through. Now I'm gonna slice this from one end to the other so we can get this whole point set sliced, both portions of it. And no need to hold out. Look at that. I tell you what. Now granted, we know I'm not eating all of this because there's no need. But the thing about brisket is you get to share that experience with everybody else. I'm just gonna stack it up so you can see. Now, the thing about brisket is it can be pricey when you go to certain places to eat it, okay? But the thing you want to understand is you want to make sure, and I always like to shear off these ends. These burnt ends are precious. This is gold. A lot of people want to get those brisket burnt ends, just like pork belly burnt ends, but since it's beef, it ends up being a lot more expensive for the cut. But I'll put those out there for you to see as well. And as I finish these cuts, then I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna arrange them on the plate there, so they'll be ready when everyone wants to eat. Because I tell you what, when we ring that dinner bell, everybody's gonna be excited to come and get their chunks. So these big, juicy, tender, burnt ends are the business. You want that fat in there because that fat is the flavor, you know, and done properly. And the thing about a brisket, you can inject it, okay? You can do a lot of things to make sure that that fat rendering holds some significant flavor for you, so that whether you use it in a sandwich, stew, or just plain across your plate and eating it straight up, you're gonna enjoy it. Oh, more burnt ends. Look at that. It may look burnt, but it's tender and juicy. So we're gonna put those over here. And now it's time to go ahead and make our display. So I'm gonna go ahead, take my knife, I'm gonna slide some of these over, see how it all sits together in a nice pile. Move these burnt ends, and we're gonna bring our plate in so everybody can see as we lay this brisket down on this platter. And you see you got these mixed vegetables in here that are gonna go ahead and soak up that brisket juice and that flavor. And those of you that know, you can see that nice tight pink smoke ring across the top. InvincibleChef signature. That way you know it was thoroughly smoked for at least 16 hours. And when you have that, you know you got quality brisket. Now you can go to a restaurant some places and it's gonna cost you a good $36 for a pound of this. So it's a good idea to learn how to smoke these at home. And if you use the InvincibleChef technique, you're guaranteed to get a quality, juicy, tender smoked brisket at home. And ain't nothing wrong with that. So as I put this together and lay these slices down in a nice cascading fashion, everybody's gonna see it. More importantly, they're already smelling it and they're gonna be excited to come in and partake. So let's get that in there. Oh, that fat is good. Nice, juicy, and ready. We don't want anybody getting out of turn, so let's get you where you belong. All right, and then what I like to do, once the slices, the full slices are set, is to go ahead and take those burnt ends and put them around the edges. Just like when people come in, they get appetizers and everything, they can go ahead and snag those right off the edge. And they get real excited about it because, you know, they're bite size. You don't grab them with a couple of fingers, squeeze them, nice, soft, juicy, and tasty for everybody involved. Look at that, just tear apart. That fat and that meat comes together, so much flavor. You can't beat it with a bat. So once you get your brisket on full display, I can't help it. Goodness gracious. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's an Invincible Chef staple, and it's ready for your barbecue, for your tailgate, for your party. If you want what's best, forget about the rest. You know you want this smoke. Get down with the Invincible Chef. Come get yours. Now, one more item to check on. We're gonna go and look at the grill one more time. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, everybody, it's game time. Those rib tips are done. They spent their time on the grill, nice and juicy. They got seared on the edges, and that was perfect because once we closed that top, it's sealed in that heat. Because of that kettle grill, we got that nice convection effect and everything. And so the heat rotated in there, sealed those juices in, and that heat on that grill got the nice crispy edges to it. Now, you see that they're nice, bite-sized, tender, juicy, very tasty. And this is a finger food everybody can go ahead and grab and get started with. You can either put barbecue sauce on these or use them with a choice of dipping sauces. Me personally, I like to eat them straight up because I like the smoky taste. When it comes down to it, you can't beat them. And they're not very big, so you're not gonna get full if you eat a bunch of pieces of them. So you get a couple of bites out of each. So you can get 3-4 of these. Get that barbecue taste, savor that flavor. You're not gonna be too full for the main course of your meal. So rib tips is a go-to appetizer. You know, get everybody ready for the barbecue. They're really quick to make. And if you're an inexperienced person on the grill, excellent menu item to get your confidence up. You know what I'm saying? So you get these chopped up now. There are actually stores you can buy that brisket meat already either chopped up or separated from the spare ribs, so you can go ahead and use it. Season that bad boy up, throw it on the grill like normal, and have at it. So once again, we got those rib tips for you, Invincible Chef style. They're always gonna be a home run hitter, so go ahead and enjoy those anytime you have a barbecue. When you're gonna finish these, might put some sauce in them, but I'm gonna enjoy this one I'm chewing on right now, and we're gonna set up the rest of the dishes. We'll be right back in a few minutes. Welcome back, everybody. To wrap this up, once again, it's the Invincible Chef. Here's the finished product. We got the Invincible Brisket, we have the tri-tip roast, and we have the rib tips. Now, we started obviously with the brisket because I use the reverse timeline. I start with the thing that takes the longest to cook. I prep that, and then I cook the other items, prepare them within the timeline it takes for that item to finish. So I used the universal rub seasoning for all of them, and I basted them all and got them to marinating with the combination of Worcestershire sauce, soy sauce, and the rice wine vinegar. It helped the seasonings penetrate the meats very good. We slow smoked this brisket, got a good 16 hours in it. As you can see, there's a smoke ring there, and we got some good, tender, juicy, delicious burnt ends. After that, we went ahead and prepared this tri-tip roast. Now, it was an easy cook with direct heat on the grill. Got it to about 125, 130 degrees at a nice medium rare, and it was nice juicy slices laid out over some green leaves that are gonna soak up those juices, and you can eat that garnish as well as the meat. And also in between, we went ahead and seasoned up the same way some pork rib tips. These are nice, tender, juicy finger foods that can be cooked as an appetizer or as a main dish. You know what I'm saying? They can get you that barbecue flavor just like with some spare ribs, or something that can get your confidence up if you're a novice barbecuer. Spread these out on the grill, even spacing in between, you enjoy them. Now, after you've seen all of this, you know how I do it, and you can do it too. I appreciate you spending this time with me. You can find me on TikTok at The Invincible Bear Fan, and the same name on Instagram at The Invincible Bear Fan, and at Facebook at The Invincible Chef. So you can find me at those sites. You can see all of these tips that I have for cooking and preparing these meats, and on YouTube at Invincible Chef, all caps, one word. If you look at these social medias and if you follow me there, I'll be giving you tips on how you can become a chef in your own right and you can be invincible. Welcome to my cooking show once again. You know you want this smoke, featuring the Invincible Chef. I appreciate your time and enjoy the smoke and the barbecue. I'll catch you the next time around. Invincible Chef out.